Hey, what's up everyone? Raging Golden Eagle here, having way too much fun as always. And those of you who were paying attention may actually remember that in my last video, I made just a single offhanded comment about how people are very unlikely to fund studies or have them done if they know the study is going to prove their position wrong. Unfortunately, the fact of the matter is, quote-unquote science isn't about simply just trying to figure out what the truth is. It's basically a whole bunch of people with a lot of power and or money simply dictating, here, this is what I believe, now go do some science to prove me right. Fortunately, however, you got a whole bunch of delusional people out there who honestly believe their delusions are reality, and then pay to fund a study to prove it so they can have something to point to when they're arguing. And much to the surprise of no one who lives in reality, the study proves the exact opposite. So what do you do when that happens? What do you do when the study you yourself funded to prove your point actually disproves your point? Why, you brush it under the rug, of course. The EU suppressed a 300-page study that found piracy doesn't harm sales. Really, all you need to know is in the title of this article, huh? The European Commission went and spent $428,000, from the taxpayers of course, on a study about how piracy impacts the sales of copyrighted music, books, video games, and movies. But then they pretty much buried the report and never shared it. Most likely because the study determined that there is no evidence that piracy is a major problem. In fact, this is what they concluded with. In general, the results do not show robust statistical evidence of displacement of sales by online copyright infringements. That does not necessarily mean that piracy has no effect, but only that the statistical analysis does not prove with sufficient reliability that there is an effect. And I'm going to be linking the full study in the description box below, by the way, in case you guys want to check it out for yourselves. In all of its archived glory, in case they try to scrub it too. So what did they actually find out? Turns out they discovered that illegal downloads and streams can actually boost legal sales of games at least. And in fact, the only time they found some negative correlation between piracy and sales was with major blockbuster movies. The part they mention in the article was that for every 10 recent top films watched illegally, 4 fewer films are consumed legally. A displacement rate of 40% basically. Sounds horrible, doesn't it? Movies are losing 40% of their revenue to piracy. Well, it only seems that way until you read a little bit further. At the very end of that same paragraph in the study, they say the estimated loss for recent top films is 5% of current sales volumes. I guess there's not as many people out there resorting to piracy as the MPAA would like you to believe, huh? And the fact that piracy can actually boost legal sales of games doesn't surprise anyone who's ever been a pirate, like myself. Back when I was a prolific pirate, it was really for 2 reasons. 1, I couldn't afford the stuff I was pirating anyway because I was a broke teenager. And 2, it was the nice way to get demos of games that don't have demos, if you know what I mean. So I guess in that sense it could have resulted in some lost sales, but only if the product was shit. Turns out if you make a product people actually want to buy, they're gonna want to buy it. Now that I have more money than I used to, I actually go out of my way to give money to the people that are making the stuff I actually like. Cause I understand how this works. If they don't make money for doing it, they're gonna stop doing it. And honestly, that is one thing I will always just point and laugh at the pirates for. If you weren't paying for the stuff you like, then you got no rights to whine when the creators stop making it. But anyway, how was this study finally brought into the light in the first place? Well, it turns out a member of the European Parliament for the German Pirate Party was able to get a hold of the report through an EU Freedom of Information Access to Document request. Yeah, they basically had to go through a legal loophole just to see this study that the EU was trying to cover up and hide. And we all know why they tried to hide it too. Going back to what I said at the very beginning of this video, they had this study done because they were absolutely convinced it was going to prove them right. And they were most likely going to use it as justification for all sorts of extra laws that they planned on pushing. All sorts of extra copyright and trademark quote-unquote protections they were probably about ready to implement. This was the study that was going to give them the moral justification for doing so. Except it didn't work out that way. So when faced with the facts, do they admit they were wrong and change their minds and move on to something else? Of course not, because we're not dealing with reasonable people here. We're dealing with ideologues. Just because they were proven wrong doesn't mean they're gonna stop. I mean, damn, Puritans and busybodies wouldn't even exist anymore if they were capable of admitting that they're wrong. So obviously the only logical course of action is to completely hide this study and pretend it never existed. Do you have any idea how many people's careers are riding on keeping this charade going? How many billions, if not trillions of dollars are being thrown into this? They're not just gonna let it go without a fight, you know. So every time we see something like this happen, we need to do our jobs and signal boost it. Let the Streisand effect take over. As I mentioned before, we're dealing with emotionally driven glorified monkeys here, not people. We're never gonna change their minds. But if we can out them as manipulators and liars to the general public that they are trying to convince to their side, then we don't need to change their minds because we've already won. That's all I gotta say, guys. Thanks for listening.